Hi, welcome back to my channel. I didn't think that I was going to be making this video today. I believed that my next video would be another fun recipe with my grandma or another fashion video. Unfortunately, on March 18th, 2020, a 5.7 magnitude earthquake hit Magna, Utah. Myself and my family was affected by this earthquake in the middle of the corona scare. So here is my experience.
And then there was an earthquake. As if coronavirus wasn't enough, the shaking caused damage in various places.
The night before the earthquake, I went to bed, and quite honestly, I was afraid of what I was going to wake up to. Every day, the death tolls in Italy are just rising. My biggest concern was the virus. I went to bed late, kind of grumpy about how I have to stay indoors and how bored I was. And then I woke up to my grandma's screams and cries, and I am so thankful that I was home during this time because my grandma is quite elderly. She's in her 70s, and I don't know how she would have handled this earthquake on her own, already stressed out about the virus. So at 7:08 in the morning on March 18th, she was screaming and crying, and I don't think that the earthquake woke me up initially. I think it was her cries, and I got up and realized we were having an earthquake. And if you guys don't live in Salt Lake City, Utah, you don't know that we are expecting a big earthquake to hit us. That's what was said to us since we were kids in elementary school. We had maybe 6 drills a year. In middle school, high school, we had our teachers thoroughly just explained everything that we should do in a disaster. And I want to take a moment to thank my teachers, because without you, I wouldn't be prepared for what happened on the 18th. Everything just kind of flashed through my mind, and I heard my grandma's screams, and we went under the doorway in the hallway and we hugged each other as it rumbled, and finally it stopped. And I have 2 little lovebirds. You might hear them singing in the background right now. They are 2 female lovebirds, and they can't stand being in the same cage, so they're in 2 separate cages. And right after the rumbling had stopped, I rushed into the room they were in, and I took Blue out of her cage and put her in the same cage with Ricky so that I could take them out. And I grabbed a blanket and I wrapped the blanket around them because they're lovebirds. They're originally from Africa. They can't stand the cold here in Utah. I grabbed my passports and my documentations, and you know, with the corona scare, we do have water and food stocked up, so I took some of that. I took blankets and we went outside, and I thought this was it. I believed we were safe, you know, the drama of the day was over, but unfortunately it wasn't. I'm a firm believer in the universe, God, or whatever you may call it yourself, that random things happen for a reason. So I live on the 4th floor, and I live in apartments, obviously, on the 4th floor, and I don't know my neighbors. I never see my neighbors. And the day before the quake, I just ran, like, I was going up the stairs and I just ran past this teenage girl that lives right next door to us. I've never seen her before. That's quite normal in my apartments. We don't really know each other as neighbors, but I've never seen her before. And the day before the quake, I just noticed her and I was like, okay, that's who my neighbor is. And the day of the quake, I noticed she was all by herself, and I asked her, she's probably in middle school or high school, I asked her if she was alone, and she's like, yes, my parents are at work, so I told her to stick around with me and my grandma and my 2 little birds. And for a good while we were okay. There were no aftershocks at the time. We were just outside standing away from buildings. And then I looked up at our building and I noticed all the pigeons starting to fly away. And that's the number one thing that you know when the animals start fleeing, something is about to happen. So I looked over at my grandma and I was like, Grandma, the pigeons are fleeing. And she's like, oh no, something's gonna happen again. And quite surely enough, there was another smaller quake. It was an aftershock. And we were outside and it was pretty heavy. And my birds were fine up until that aftershock. They were kissing each other, they were peeking out, they were talking, they were fine. And then when that, I believe the aftershock was 3.9, and when that hit, my little lovebird Blue, I looked at her and she looked at me and she had what appeared to be a panic attack. So she fell to the floor and she couldn't get back up to her feet. And I honestly thought she was going to die. So I kept calling her and she tried getting up, but she couldn't, and she was flapping her wings, and I was telling her it was okay. At the same time, my mom was coming from work and she just had a panic attack there too. So she rushed over right after her panic attack to come see us. And when she showed, I was like, Blue, something's wrong with Blue. I think she might pass away. Like, she did not look okay. And then she was fine. She got up and she had feeling in her legs again. So right as soon as Blue got up, this man, who I assume is one of my neighbors, I've never seen him before, he comes up to me and he begs me to call the cops. He claims that he's afraid that he's going to hurt someone. He was triggered by the quake, and he said that if I didn't call the cops to detain him, he was going to hurt himself or someone else or damage property. So at that moment, I just kind of like stared at him like, what? And then it clicked and I was like, okay, I will call the cops, and I did. And I had to talk him out of smashing windows of cars. There's these big decorative rocks that are around our apartments, and he grabbed one and he was fighting with himself not to damage the cars, but it was like an internal struggle, and I kept telling him, hey, it's okay, they're coming, they're gonna detain you. And he's like, please don't let me. And then he'd stop and he'd say, please don't let me leave because I'm gonna hurt myself or someone else. And I was like, okay, don't, just sit down. So I did. And then he would have the urge to do it again, and then I'd have to talk him out of it. And the cops finally showed up, and I explained what was going on to them and that he just didn't feel safe. And they did take him. I want to take a moment to thank the law enforcement for helping us out during that time of need. They had about 160 calls in the morning of the quake, and they were just so calm and collected and willing to help. So I want to give them a big thanks from the bottom of my heart, because I don't know what would have happened to that gentleman if they didn't show up. Along with everything that had happened that day, there were tons of rumors circulating online. People were getting text messages from various phone numbers, and they didn't know if it was accurate or not. But like I mentioned earlier, Utah is due for a big quake along our Wasatch Front, and we initially thought this was the big quake, and then we learned it was only a 5.7. This quake was moderate, but it felt immense, and I strictly believe that's because of us being scared because of the coronavirus. I think we would have handled it a lot better. We would have been less stressed and scared if we weren't already scared for our lives. But that morning we had a lot of messages circulate about a bigger quake happening that day that would have been bigger than a 5.7. They were saying it would have been in the 7th range or even 9, which we were all very scared and devastated, and we felt the aftershocks throughout the day. But I also want to thank our local media here. You guys were spot on, and you guys kept on repeating that no, this was not reported by any agencies, that we don't know when the big quake was going to happen, that sure enough, that was not our big quake. But we were not going to have it on that day. I can honestly say that March 18th, 2020 was one of the worst days of my life. Just because I was just so scared about the coronavirus, because I do have an elderly grandma who has asthma, and then the earthquake, and she was very stressed, and I was just trying to take care of my family, my pets, my neighbors and community and people who needed me. But at the same time, we had to keep social distancing, so we didn't know if, if the rumors were true and we did have the bigger quake, would we have to leave? Because I do live on the 4th floor. Would we have to leave our apartment? And then where would we even seek shelter? Because if our homes were damaged, we can't really seek shelter in a high school like, you usually can during an emergency, because we had to socially isolate. So we talked to our neighbors, but at the same time we were away from our neighbors, and it was just a very, very interesting time for Utah. We were in the state of emergency for 2 things: the coronavirus and the earthquake. I am thankful that the earthquake wasn't bigger than it was. I am thankful that no one got hurt. We did have damage downtown to properties, but the damage was mainly to older buildings. So it's nothing that can't be fixed. We were startled, but we are alive, and we are going to keep going. We are strong and we are united, and that's just the way that us Utahns are. We're friendly, we're happy to help one another, and in time of crisis, we are quick. I want to thank everyone that's helped out with law enforcement, journalism. You guys were really, really helping us out and trying not to have panic in society, because yes, the virus is spreading, and yes, we have an earthquake. So we were in and out of our homes all day long because of the small quakes. I am just so thankful that everyone's healthy and safe, and my birds do have PTSD. Anytime that I leave them alone, they start singing like they are right now, and they start freaking out. So I have to constantly go over there and assure them that I'm with them and that they're safe. They're very jumpy, but so is everyone else. But we are okay. This smaller quake is going to prepare us for the bigger one that's going to hit either today, tomorrow, or in 1,000 years. We don't know. But this is definitely going to be a learning lesson for all of us. And I just want to say that I love you all, and I hope that you guys are all safe, and we're going to get through this. We just have to stay calm and collective, and just try to de-stress, whether it's through meditation or just kind of taking 5 minutes to yourself, watching something funny on Netflix, just taking a pause from the news a little bit. Sure, stay informed because you have to during the time of crisis, but at the same time, do something for yourself that will distract you from all the mayhem that seems to be happening in the world. But I just want to let you guys know that I love you, and let's all pray and hope that this mess goes away soon, and that there's no more natural disasters, no more viruses, and that we could go back to life as scheduled. And maybe this thing is going to teach us to love each other a little bit more, and to hug each other after this is all over with, and we can hug each other. And I hope that you and your family are safe. Until next time, we will have more recipes, we will have more fashion videos. I love you.